Once you've pulled up idle, just type done into the chat. All right. All right, I'll continue with the class. So, before we get into the data types and numbers, I'll talk about comments and the professionals in Python. For them, comments is very important to them because you can use comments to sort out your work so that if you have a lot of code, then you can use comments to understand what you're doing. So there are two kinds of comments. As you can see, there's this hashtag in the beginning of the line. So then the rest of the line will not be processed. And then there's also the triple quotation mark comment. And then you can do multiple lines. But for the most part, I'll be using just the regular hashtag comments. So if you could all go to IDLE and just type some random comments and then just practice a little. And when you're done playing around with the comments, type done into the chat. Is everybody ready? Alright, I don't think we need to spend that much time on comments because they're not really that important anyway. I'm just telling it to you guys so you guys understand when I use a comment. So here's the beginning of our data types continued lesson. Here's a full list of Python data types, including integers, floating point, strings, lists, dictionaries, tuples, sets, and booleans. So what an integer is just like a whole number or a negative number, right? So 3, it can be -3, 300, 300. Floating point numbers just have a decimal point, so there's the integer with a decimal point. And then what happens when you like divide two integers, sometimes it'll turn into a floating point number. So if I say 46 divided by 10, it'll turn into a floating point number and become 4.6, right? Strings, we already talked about this. It's the hello world. It's just a few characters inside of quotation marks. It can be inside double quotation marks or single quotation. Lists, we went over this for like 5 seconds. Basically, they're just brackets, and then you can put a bunch of stuff inside them, and you separate your items in the list by commas. Dictionaries are kind of like special lists. At least that's what I think, how I think of them. But you also use value pairs. So you have this curly bracket, and then you have just two values separated by commas. Tuples are also basically lists. I haven't really used them that much, but they have the regular parentheses. They're like a special kind of list. Sets, I don't really use them. They're just curly brackets again. And then booleans are really important in Python. So it's a logical value indicating true or false. And we'll get more into booleans later in the course. If I'm going too fast, you guys can press the too fast button under participants. So again, the 3 numeric data types are integers, int, floating point numbers, float, and complex. And we'll mainly be focusing on int and float. Alright, so today we'll be making your own file. So what you want to do is you go to IDLE, you launch it, and then in the top left corner there's a file button. You can press new file, and then you can type code into that file, and then you press run to actually run it instead of pressing enter every time in the shell. So I'll demonstrate. So you go to file, new file, and then, oh, you guys probably can't see this. So this is what it should look like, right? Untitled on the top. You can name it whatever you want. Just make sure it ends with a .py. So I'll name it to save your file, press Control S, and then I'll save in documents, and then I'll name it my first program.py. Right. And then let's do our first program again. So just do the hello world, just to get used to this new format. Right, so then you save your file using Control S after you finish your code. So then you press run, and then run module, and then you'll go to shell,
and it'll say hello world. So after everybody has made their first file and run it, type done into the chat. While you guys are working on your first file, I'll talk a little about Replit. So it's a website, and the website name is repl.it. And on the website, you can code. And what's really cool about Replit is they have like a forum or like a public discussion thing, public page, and then they have challenges there. So if you get good at Python and you finish this course, my friend actually won like $100 from the Replit challenges. And their prizes usually vary. Like last year, they had a Python game program challenge, and you could win a Bitcoin from that, which is a lot of money. So Replit is a pretty cool place to go to code. All right, so now we'll go to our next slide, which is libraries and modules. So when you code in Python, Python doesn't know how to do everything, right? It can't just, you need some sort of code to play a video, or maybe you need some code to make a circle if you want to draw in Python, or if you want to make a game in Python. When you first download Python, Python won't have everything you will ever want to do inside. So what you need to do is you need to import a module. And a module is basically like a file that we just made, right? So on the next slide, we'll be talking about the random module, and that generates a random number for you. And basically somewhere in the Python database, Python libraries, there's a module called random.py. And then in order to import this module so that you can generate random numbers, you have to say import random, right? So like here. Now before we get into using the random module, there's a couple of other things you need to know about modules and libraries, which is that you can actually make your own module. So let's say I wanted to make a module that helps me make random numbers, except the random numbers are all negative or something like that. Then I can make my own file called negative random.py. And then when I want to use that module, I'll type in import negative random.py or import negative random. You don't need the .py at the end. So like over here, here's an example. So basically, somewhere in the Python database, there's a random.py file. And then what you do is you import this file, right? You import this file, and then you can use it. And to use the random module to generate a random integer, you use random.randrange. Okay, and then you have some parentheses and then a set. from 0 to 10. And here it generated the random number 9, right? Another thing you could do is, since you're importing from random, you can actually take the function out from inside this file and use that file, right? So then you have rand range. You don't need to have the random.rand range. So everybody try this inside of IDLE. Just play around with random.rand range and from random import rand range. And when you're done, type done into the chat. All right, has everyone finished playing around with the random module? All right, I think that it won't take this much time just to write 4 lines of code. I'll be moving on to the next one, which is an example program. So I'll do a walkthrough with you guys that makes a program that chooses a random number between 0 and 100, right? So here I'm in the shell. But again, what we want to do is we want to make a new file, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a file. And I'll open the my first program.py that we just made. Alright, so what do we want to do? We want to make a program that chooses a random number between 0 and 100. So the main calculation we'll need to import random, right? And then we'll also need random.rand range 0 and 100. Alright. But the thing is, just typing random.rand range 0, 100 won't do anything, so we need to print it, right? And then, in addition, if we just display some random number, that's not a very quality program. You want to have a program that does a little more. So let's add a string in here. So last class, remember, we talked about how to convert a number to a string. You use the str function, right? So now this is a string. So another thing you can do with strings is you can actually add them together, and that will just combine the two strings, right? So your random number between 0 and 100 is, and we press Control S. And what this program will do is first it imports the random module, and then it's going to print something. What will it print? It will print your random number between 0 and 100 is, and then it will also print after that a string of a random number between 0 and 100. So we Control S, and then let's run our first program. So here's the shell, and this is what your program should look like, or the result should look like. So after seeing that walkthrough, do you guys think you could do that by yourself? I would prefer if you use rand range, because I'm just more used to using rand range. So do you guys all understand this? The difference between rand range and rand int is rand range considers the second number. So if you say random.randint 0, 10, it'll return a number between 0 and 10 inclusive. But if you do random.rand range, it'll only pick a number that's in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but not 10. But the thing is that rand range, you can also use a step. So you want a random number, but it's an even number. You can say rand range 0, 2, 10 or something like that. 0, 10, 2. Then that'll return an even number. Alright, now everybody make a program that rolls the dice. And on the screen you can see an example output. And that's preferably what your output should be. Remember that rand range only returns the first number to the number before this last number, right? So rand range 0, 6 will return 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you roll a dice, the output is going to be 1 through 6. So you need to figure out a way to change that. While you guys are working on the program, I'll just talk about cleaning up your path. So when you save a file in Python, you want to save it to a file on your computer that you made yourself for Python. Because if you just have a bunch of random files everywhere, you won't be able to find anything. And also, if you want to delete some files, it'll be much easier if you know where all of your Python. And once you're done with the dice program, type done into the chat. All right. Looks like everyone's done. If you're not done yet, if you could type not done into the chat right now, that'd be great. But I'll start to talk about homework. And what your homework is to just make a random program, whatever you want to do, using random and the print function. So you can just make a regular function like the ones we just made where it just prints your number is blank, or your number between something and something is blank. Or you can be creative and just make a really cool program, and the next time you will turn it into the classroom. So that's pretty much it. This class was kind of short compared to the last one. But next class we'll be talking about a little bit more about numbers, but then we'll also be getting into strings, and we'll make a bunch of text-based programs, and then we might even get into lists. So for now, the class is done. If anyone has any questions, stick around after the class, and if you have any questions like during the week for your homework, you can just email me or the Myri-Ed email.